Toastmaster Ruchira Singh with her speech title Become a CEO Today. Become a CEO Today, Toastmaster Ruchira. Toastmaster Ruchira, the stage is all yours. And the time is from 5 to 7 minutes.
How many of you in the audience would like to become a CEO today? Sounds impossible? Don't worry. By the end of my speech, I guarantee that each and every one of you will have the power to become a CEO. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Did you know that according to the World Health Organization, the average life expectancy for Indians is about 75 years? So on my last birthday, I realized that in all probability, I had completed the first quarter of my life. Now, when it comes to the corporate world, CEOs conduct quarterly business reviews. So I decided to apply these principles to my life as well, and I conducted a quarterly review of my life. And from this, I realized that there were certain incidents that stood out for me, that had shaped the direction of my thoughts and made me who I am today. Now, the first incident started when I was in grade 2, and we had these compulsory swimming lessons. Now, make no mistake, I quickly learned how to swim, but only in the shallow end. I was absolutely terrified of the deep end of the pool. And at the end of each class, as my teacher would blow the whistle, I would watch my classmates scramble out of the pool, run excitedly towards the deep end, and jump in squealing with laughter, while I just floated around the shallow end of the pool. Now, one day, my teacher was holding me when she suddenly turned around and pushed me into the deep end of the pool. I started to panic. I thought that I was going to drown. When suddenly, I heard this voice inside my head say, "You know how to swim. You can do this." And I started swimming. And I swam to the shallow end, and I was still alive. That day, ladies and gentlemen, I learned that I made the decision to swim and not sink. And I learned that in order to master our minds, we need to establish command over our thoughts. Now, let's fast forward to a couple of years later when I was in class 11. And we had just started studying these concepts of higher physics and higher mathematics. Now, there was this topic called differentiation. And a lot of my classmates had already learned this concept from their coaching centers. But I knew that it would come in maths later on, so I thought I'd master it then. But to my dismay, differentiation was needed in physics before it was taught in mathematics. And as I watched my classmates solve these problems, I thought that they were speaking in a language of their own. And every day I felt that I was falling back with just no hope to succeed. So I went to my mother and I said, "Mama, I just can't understand this calculus. Everyone else seems to be able to do it, but I just can't." Then my mother put her arm around me and she said, "Think about it, Ruchi. Are you actually unable to do the math? Or are you facing a mental block because you're scared?" With that one conversation, the fog of fear in my mind began to disappear, and I could see things clearly. And would you believe it? Calculus is one of my favorite parts of mathematics. From this, I learned that in order to master our minds, we need to exercise the willpower to subdue our fears. Now, the third incident that shaped my life started even younger, but it spanned across many years of my life. When I was in kindergarten, my first ever report card of me aged just 3 years read, "Ruchira may be the tiniest one in the sandpit, but she loves to organize everyone in it." Now, across the years, this organizing capability has stayed with me. And for those of you who've seen me in person, So has the tiny part. Now, growing up, whenever we would play team games, I would be the one to help choose which games to play or to choose who would be playing in which team. And for that, I was usually called bossy. Now, I didn't like the sound of that. So I started to actively hold in my thoughts so that I wouldn't appear bossy. Now, what happened due to that, ladies and gentlemen, is that I began to see that far from that decisive child, I had turned into this indecisive person. Then one day, I was reading this book, Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, where she writes that we don't always encourage leadership in women. Instead of calling that little girl bossy, why don't we start by saying she already has leadership qualities? And that quote changed my life. And I began my journey on a path of leadership, and I've not looked back since. It started small as the head girl of my batch, to positions of responsibility in college, all the way to today. But I'm comfortably able to juggle my responsibilities as the president of 2 clubs at Toastmasters. Now, from this, I learned, ladies and gentlemen, that if we want to move our minds, we need to overcome our insecurities. Now, across these 3 stories, what I learned from my life is that we can accomplish anything if we just set our minds to it. And to do that, we need to have command over our thoughts, exercise the willpower, and overcome our insecurities. So, are you ready to become the CEO of your mind today, Mr. Toastmaster of the Day?